Hey there everyone, welcome back to another Impressions video, and today we're going to be looking at this game right here. This is Seikaiju to Fushigi no Dungeon, which is Etrian Mystery Dungeon in English, I think. So yeah, um, let's talk about this this game right here. And first, okay, I got this out. This is the instruction book. Sort of. I'm using it for reference because I don't remember all the characters and stuff. But yeah, so we have this game here. It's a cross between Etrian Odyssey and the Mystery Dungeon series, and those series are pretty different. So you have Mystery Dungeon is essentially a roguelike. If you don't know what a roguelike is, it's essentially a dungeon crawler where you start at level 1 in a dungeon, you go through, and if you die, you go back to level 1. If you leave the dungeon for any reason, you go back to level 1. And if you die, you lose all your stuff. If you come out of the dungeon without dying, you get to keep your stuff. That's how it works. That's essentially the gameplay. If you move, it's kind of grid based. You move one square, the enemies move one square. You attack, the enemies can attack or move one square. It's just like turn based, but not in the same way as like a kind of everybody moves and then everybody else moves. It's more one to one, turn based. And yeah, this has, I don't know. You also have Etrian Odyssey, which is a first person dungeon crawler and party based, kind of like a wizardry clone, if you will. Um, but yeah, this is a mashup between those two games. So I'm sure you're wondering, how does it play? Does it play like Etrian Odyssey? Does it play like Mystery Dungeon? Um, it's hard to say actually. The main way the game plays actually is a lot like Mystery Dungeon, with a few major changes. So, but the kind of movement I've described here, the turn-based movement, where movement is turn-based and attacking is turn-based one to one, is in the game. That's how it works. You Dungeons are grid-based. You move on a grid. You can display the grid if you want to. Um, the and if you move, enemies move. If you don't move, enemies don't move. If you attack, enemies attack. If you don't attack, enemies won't attack. That's how the game works. So that's how this game works too. All it works like a mystery dungeon game, except it doesn't have the other stuff. There's no permadeath in this game. There's no permadeath. There's no level resetting. There is kind of losing your items, but even that is mitigated by a kind of way to get your stuff back. So it's a lot less, I think, frustrating than a normal roguelike would be for people who don't play roguelikes. So I know a lot of people get frustrated with them. Like, you're playing a game and you're building up something awesome, and then suddenly you die. You die unexpectedly and you lose all your stuff. And you gotta like go back to past dungeons just to get money or to get items to again level up. So it's kind of frustrating for a lot of people that way. But in this case, this game gets rid of a lot of that. So you keep your levels, and the leveling is done like Etrian Odyssey. So you have a kind of skill tree that you spend points in to get skills for your guys, and they retain their levels and their equipment and whatever. And unless you die in a boss, like you have a chance to lose some items, but otherwise, it's pretty rare that you'll be losing items altogether. So it's you never lose levels too. So that there's that. Um, what else? That's how the game generally plays. It plays. Um, the interface is a lot like in Etrian Odyssey. You have like a hub town that's menu based, and it has the same kind of buildings. So you have your inn and your weapon shop and your kind of restaurant and a town hall kind of place and a air balloon to bring you to the dungeons. And yeah, it's a lot like Etrian Odyssey in that it looks a lot like Etrian Odyssey too. The character designs are like that awful Etrian Odyssey design style that I hate. Um, I've mentioned this before in my other Etrian Odyssey videos. Every time I play Etrian Odyssey, I think like, God, I hate this art. And the art is like, it's like this. It's like all lowlies all the time, even though like they're not like kids. They're grown ass people, but they all look like little kids anyway. Um, but that's how it is. I just don't like the art style, but I won't let that hold me back from enjoying the game, which I did enjoy the game, and I enjoy Etrian Odyssey too. So it's the kind of similar situation where it just I hate these character designs. I know a lot of people like them, so I'm not gonna like go off on it or anything, but it's just like just not for me. Um, anyway, let's talk about how this game works. Um, there are there are issues with this game. It's not a perfect game, but it's a good game. It's a game worth buying. Um, there are some issues though. So, but first I want to talk about the characters. I will talk about the characters and the party setup and how things work in general. So again, it's one-to-one turn-based, but you have a party of four. Normally these games are not party-based so much. If you've played the other kind of games, I haven't played. Okay, I haven't played any of the Pokemon or Chocobo Mystery Dungeon games. I don't know what those are like, but if you've played like Nightmare of Druaga or Shiren the Wanderer 3, I think it doesn't have the 3 on it, but whatever on the Wii. It's similar in to that, but those games all have usually like a single protagonist, and then sometimes you can get followers, like you can get one or two like extra people to kind of hang out with you. But it's not all the time. And but this game, it's all the time that you have a four-person party, and the game is like set up to be for a four-person party, which mean it doesn't necessarily mean that it's hard. It just means that like when you have less than four people in your party, you can't do a lot of things that are necessary for the game. And it's kind of a weird handicap in the sense that like normally you'd expect you could go through the game as a one man party anyway, just because the normal games are kind of like that. But this game is not really balanced for that, in and not really for damage reasons either. I'll get into that a little later though. But yeah, you have your party of four that you can move throughout the dungeon. The AI controls the three party members, and you control the leader only, which is sometimes good and sometimes really bad. Because the AI does things that are inexplicable sometimes. Like you're just left like, why are you doing this? Stop doing this. But it doesn't. So like you're always getting stuck in kind of situations you don't want to be in because of the AI. Um, but sometimes it's really helpful. Sometimes it does a lot of really good stuff for you, but sometimes it doesn't. I'll give you some examples. Like if you have magic users in your party, you have an option when you make your party when they have skills. You can turn off automatic use of skills by the AI. You're gonna want to do this. You'll notice it right away. You're gonna want to turn off a lot of skills, even good ones, because the AI will use those skills all the time. Will use them unlimited amounts of using those skills until you're completely out of MP. So like once you have your magic points, like unless you brought a lot of magic point refresh items with you, you're gonna run out of magic points way before you actually need to use them, because the AI is relentless in using those. It'll just like use them over and over again, even in like situations where it's totally unnecessary. If you have like people who can put status effects and you have a lot of different types, the computer will just like use 100 status effects on weak enemies that you can kill with one guy. Essentially, it'll just like keep on casting status effects over and over until the enemies are dead. So again, you'll run out of energy, and like lots of times you'll find that like maybe you just want to sneak past some energy enemies. Not with the AI, you're not. The AI will rush headlong into battle. Um, if there's an enemy moving on the screen, don't expect to be able to just walk away from it because your AI, the you can walk away from it, but the three AI guys in your party are gonna be like blowing all your magic and rushing in to attack it. So that I don't think there's a way to mitigate that. There's no like setting you can change to make them less aggressive. That would have been nice. If there is, I didn't see it. It would have been nice though because there was lots of times where you're in a room where in a dungeon where like one of the levels, like sometimes there's effects where like now the enemies are twice as strong or something. Um, and you'll be like, well, I can just kind of do a quick rush to the exit to get to the next level, but you'll find that like your AI members are rushing off and attacking people that you don't want them to attack. So you'll have to like clear an entire room of monsters that you could have avoided because of the AI. So there's that. It's a negative. But another thing. Let me talk about the character classes first. That's why I brought this out so I could remember what the character classes were. I think it doesn't even say. Um, yeah, you have I think 8 classes, but I'm not 100% sure. Um, it might be 8, but it might be more. You can't use them all in the beginning of the game. You can't use them all. You have to unlock some of them. So it's not quite as open as you'd right from the beginning as you'd expect. But there are a lot of Etrian Odyssey classes. Like there's Swordman, Medic, a swordman. This is a point about Etrian Odyssey I wanted to talk about because in the Japanese, the character is a swordsman. In the English, inexplicably, he's Landstrecht or whatever it is. I don't know. I only see it in the promotional stuff for the game. I've never played Etrian Odyssey in English, but in Japanese, it's just swordsman. Um, like what is the kind of tanky class called? It's in Japanese. It's just paladin. It's like something totally different in English, I think. But you have like gunner and paladin and dancer and rune master and Furai is the new class. It kind of replaces the samurai, but it's essentially the same class. It's essentially just like a name swap with samurai from the other games. Um, and you have Hexer also. A Hexer is like a curse maker, I think, in this game. Um, you have Rune Master, Curse Maker. Yeah. Generally, though, this game doesn't. It's not very flexible with the party system. You have all these different characters you can make, but a lot of the times you're going to be stuck with a really specific. At least half of your party is always going to be a curse maker and a healer. It's almost necessary, and not for your normal dungeons. You can use whatever you want. I mean, you don't. You probably want a healer, but you don't even really necessarily need one. But the problem comes in when you have to fight the game's kind of FOEs from Etrian Odyssey. This game they're called DOEs, and when you fight them, you have to inflict status effects on them to even like cause anything more than minimum damage. And what happens is like a lot of the other classes don't have the ability to give you the correct types of status effects to get rid of this kind of force field that all the DOEs have. They have this kind of force field that makes all your damage do 1 damage no matter what. And by putting on status effects, the force field will disappear. But almost none of the other classes can effectively put on status effects. I mean, a lot of the other classes have status effects, but none of them are effective as much as the curse makers are because it's his main deal. And you'll find that like I've tried to fight DOEs in this game not using a curse maker, like using a different type of party, and it just took forever. I did it, but it was just long, much longer than it should have been because some of them require 2 different status effects to be on the boss, and like you'll find that like it just doesn't stick. you'll be trying and doing it, and like you'll get one, and then like you'll be trying for the second one, and the first one will run out by the time you get the second one. You'll just like never get a chance to break the thing without a curse maker. So it kind of limits your party for when you're fighting these things. Like you almost always need a healer and a curse maker, and then like your other half has to be people who can attack. So like you'll find that like a lot of the secondary non-attack based classes, like um, Gunner is really good, but you'll start to see like, well, do I want a character who can attack at range, or do I want a character who can buff and attack? And you'll be like, oh, well, I guess I need a prince instead of a gunner. Or you'll be like, oh, well, do I need a tanky character? Do I want a character who can also do damage and inflict status effects? And you'll be stuck in this kind of situation where like a lot of the time there is a kind of better party that's than the one you're using if you're not using the healer and curse maker or hexer or whatever. And I thought that was like a little disappointing because it kind of takes away a lot of the strategy that you needed to beat like FOEs in the previous games, where it was like a slog, like it was hard and you had to like really think about it. In this game it's just like, okay, use your hexer, curse for 2 rounds, smash with other characters. It's all of them. Like you can beat them all that way. And there's no variation. Like they have varying attacks. The DOEs have varying attacks, but like the way to beat them is the same every time. So that's a little disappointing. The bosses are a little different story. Like you can't you can use like pretty much any team you want at that point. But any dungeon with DOEs that you're planning on fighting, you need the curse maker, so you might as well just keep one in your party at all times. Beside that being said, though, you can make as many characters. You can't make as many as you want, but you can. There is a limit, but you can keep raising the limit by upgrading the town. But as you do that, you can kind of like make new characters, and what'll happen is those characters level up, regardless of if you use them or not. So, in the beginning of the game, pro tip here: make a bunch of characters. I mean, once you unlock all the classes, make a character from every class, at least one, and just throw them in the guild. Even if you don't plan on using them, there are points like if you die in the dungeon, you can send out a search party, and you'll need a second party for that. And also, like for fighting DOEs, you can set up these kind of walls that block them from going past certain levels of the dungeon. And you can set up secondary parties at those walls to fight DOEs, even if you're not there. So you can potentially have 8 characters in your party at one to fight a DOE, but it's never necessary. But yeah, that's how the party system works. It's a little weaker than I would have liked, but it's still good. I mean, all the classes are good. You can use them all effectively, um, if you're not fighting DOEs, that is. But other than that, everything else is pretty good. So yeah, um, let's talk about the I don't know, the town. I guess the town is has a bunch of buildings, as I'm saying. You can upgrade your weapons, so you can give bonuses to your weapons. You can merge weapons to make stronger weapons. You can buy new weapons. You can sell items you find in the dungeon to make new items. That's just like Etrian Odyssey. You can, find kind of, um, materials in the dungeons at certain points, and those points will give you items that you can sell, or you can, get items from killing enemies and sell them, and like new items will get unlocked in the shop. And there's a kind of a restaurant that doubles as like your kind of secondary side quest vendor. It'll just give you the side quest, but also you can buy meals there. And if you eat a meal before the dungeon, it has like some kind of special effect. So you can go, get like a little bit of a buff in some area from eating food at the restaurant. It's helpful in the beginning, especially like there's a bonus experience buff where you can get bonus experience when you kill enemies. That's a handy one in the beginning of the game because you'll be able to level up really quickly. It's also a bonus when you're trying to level up characters you've created later. Like maybe you didn't create a character early and you're like, yeah, I really want to switch my party around with this kind of different idea. You can do that kind of buff and send that one character back solo to an earlier dungeon with the experience buff, and they'll level up super quick. So you don't really have to worry about levels that much. It's not incredibly important. It's important, but not terribly important for most of the game. Uh, and that's the thing I want to talk about with this is that the difficulty for this game is really mixed and in a weird way. So let me explain this because I don't want you to think like it has difficulty spikes. It doesn't. The difficulty is like a pretty even gradation. But the problem with it is like the beginning of the game is ridiculously easy. Like you'll play through the first three dungeons, and they're kind of like tutorial dungeons anyway. But so they're, I mean, explainably easy there. But as you play, the game is really easy in the beginning, and you think like, my God, is the game going to be this easy the whole way through? Because it's really not going to be fun if it's this easy. And then when you get to like the fourth dungeon or so, it starts to pick up, and it never gets really hard um, before the story ends, which is like a little bit of a disappointment, except that um, the after credits of the game, after you beat the game, there's so much content. New content opens up, like probably the new content that opens after you beat the story is more than the actual content of the entire story. So I don't know why they did that. I feel like they made this game so that like everybody can win. And that's not like a knock. Usually it's a knock on a game where it's like it's so easy like everybody can win. But this game is the main story and how you can get through it. Everybody can get through it, I think. It's not like terribly difficult. But so if you're just kind of a person who just plays the game to get the kind of gist of the story and you want like a conclusion, you can just end there and you'd be like, well, I beat the game, it was pretty quick, and I didn't touch any of that after game stuff. But for people who are like, yeah, I like this game, but I like it more difficult, you get through the main story and you'll be like, well, that wasn't so bad, and then you'll start playing the after story content where it's like more story. There's more story, and but there's a lot of extra dungeons and tough bosses and things, and that's where the game really feels like it picks up to me. Um, I beat the game and I thought it's pretty good, but it wasn't difficult. And then I got into the later dungeons after the kind of end game content, and I thought like, okay, this is Mystery Dungeon to me. This is like that kind of difficult, kind of annoying stuff that happens in Mystery Dungeon, where, like, for example, you can go through the entire game, I mean, the story at least, without coming in contact with stuff like um, rust traps or if anybody like knows what that is already like getting cringe chills or whatever, because rust traps are things that will like weaken your armor or weaken your weapons, and like it's not really easy to level up weapons because the stuff you need to level them up is like more leveled weapons, so you have to find those things in the dungeon and they're not common. So when you start losing levels off your armor or your shields, or you can't level your armor, but you can level up your shields and your weapons, and when you start losing the bonuses you've worked really hard to add to those things, it's like you want to stab someone in the eye. And what'll happen is like throughout the entire game, through the story, I mean, there's none of that. But after the story, the very next dungeon, the very first dungeon of the many after end game dungeons, it starts up that right away. You've got like enemies that will rust your weapons, and you've got traps that will rust your weapons. Um, there's much more difficult, much more status effects get applied to you. It really feels like a good game at that point. And if you're playing the game and you think it's too easy, which you probably will in the beginning, but if you get even to the end and you think like it's too easy, continue playing. Just continue to the next couple of dungeons, and you'll kind of change your opinion, because it changes more to be like the tougher mystery dungeon games where you actually can die. Whereas like in the main story, I think I died one time, and it was like due to one of those like AI decisions where like the AI decided it was going to run into a monster room, where the monster room is like, you know, a room where like you go walk in and like suddenly there's like 20 monsters on the screen, one of those. And it's just like, well, I could just walk away, I could just turn around and go back, but the AI will just walk right past you and continue into the room, and everybody will die. That's happened, but I think that was like the only time I died in the entire main story. But afterwards, after I finished, started up the dungeons, where there's an after game where it's like Etrian Odyssey 4 in the sense that like you have the three dragons to fight, the three elemental dragons. If you remember that from Etrian Odyssey 4, you can fight them in this game too. Afterwards, they don't play a part in the main story, but they're there later after the main story is done. And then like there's like extra long dungeons, and the best part is actually there is a mystery dungeon afterwards. And that's like, it changes the rules of the game to be like mystery dungeons. So you have four players still, but everybody gets reset to level 1, and they lose all their items, and you have to start the dungeon at level 1 with no buffs and no items. It's a lot more roguelike than only that one dungeon though. So if you're interested in the game and you like playing it, but you really wish at the end like it was more of a roguelike than it is, there's that. So that was actually helpful. I put a lot more time into that, I think, than anything else in the post game. And I think a lot of the game, the best parts of it are in the post game. So it's it's kind of a weird situation where like you're playing the game and you have to beat the story to unlock all the best parts. So I can't really think of anything else I wanted to say about this. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff I'm forgetting, but that's every video. If you guys have any questions, though, something you think I'm like totally skipped over here, feel free to ask. Um, yeah, that's about it, though. The game, I want to say the main story of the game is not that long, 30 hours maybe at the most, and that's if you're like being extra thorough. Um, but that being said, like the end game stuff, like if you just want to continue the actual dungeons of the end game, um, you're looking at way more than 30 extra hours. There's probably, like I said, there's probably more dungeons in the post game than there is in the actual story. And those dungeons are all much longer than the story dungeons because they're meant for higher levels. So you kind of end up in a situation where like the post game takes way longer than the actual game, and it feels a lot more like it should be the actual game. So a lot of the game is fun because of the after game. It's fun. The normal game, the normal story is fun. It's fun and it's good, and it's a relatively quick game you could get through quickly if you don't feel like playing it the after game. But I don't know. It's probably a game that's more worthwhile if you have decided you're going to go through and play the after dungeons. So that's about it. It's a good game. I'd recommend it if you like dungeon crawlers. If you like third person dungeon crawlers that are turn based, I don't um, turn based in everything. I don't think there are any other examples of that actually. I can't even think of any. Nightmare of Druaga is the closest, but it's not party based, and your levels reset. So yeah, that's about it. I guess I'm done here. So I will talk to you guys sometime in the future when I talk about some other games that I have beaten already, but I'm too lazy to make videos about. Anyway, see you guys next time.